when you forgive debt, you're not just disappearing debt. So who is paying for it?
People think that the President of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not.
One of the excuses you always hear when there's a massive failure by the Biden-Harris administration is that no one could have possibly seen it coming. No one could have predicted that the Inflation Reduction Act would actually increase inflation. No one could have predicted that the Afghan government would collapse immediately after we pulled out our troops, leading to a security breakdown and the deaths of 13 U.S. military personnel. No one could have predicted that shipping pallets of cash to Iran would provide funding for a new campaign of terrorist attacks by Iran's proxies, and so on. The truth, though, of course, is that all of these disasters were easily foreseeable. The problem is that the people in charge of predicting the consequences of all these policies are either grossly incompetent or malicious. At every step, they have lied to Americans about what they know or should know was about to happen. And there's maybe no better illustration of this problem than the federal government's response to Hurricane Helene, which has now killed more than 200 people. And 200 people may be a gross underestimate when all is said and done. We still do not even know the full scale of this disaster, except that it's massive. So take a look at what the DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas was saying just 3 months ago. Mayorkas, as head of the DHS, oversees the Federal Disaster Relief Agency, FEMA. Well, on June 21st, Mayorkas went in front of the cameras to boast that FEMA was, quote, tremendously prepared for the upcoming hurricane season. In fact, he doesn't just say that FEMA is tremendously prepared for hurricanes. He says that they're prepared for wildfires, extreme heat, a variety of other disasters. He can handle all of it, he says. Watch.
FEMA is tremendously prepared. This is what we do. This is what they do. And the key here, Rebecca, is also to make sure that the communities who are potentially impacted are prepared as well. And it's not just hurricanes and wildfires, also extreme heat, which certainly some parts of the United States are already experiencing.
This is what we do, says Mayorkas as he smiles. It's all very reassuring. Now, admittedly, the words tremendously prepared can be interpreted in a few different ways. And unfortunately, Mayorkas wasn't more specific, but ordinarily, when the official overseeing a disaster relief agency says that they are tremendously prepared, they're saying that at a minimum, they have all the resources they need to quickly and effectively respond to whatever natural disasters may occur. So it was more than a little confusing to hear the DHS secretary on Wednesday announcing that actually FEMA is out of money. They don't even have the cash to make it through hurricane season. Watch.
Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas sounding the alarm on FEMA funding right after the devastation of Hurricane Helene. Listen.
We are meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds. FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season.
This all comes as the Biden-Harris administration spent over $1 billion from a FEMA program on services for migrants.
Now, it's easy to become desensitized to all the lying that we've heard from this administration. It's easy to roll your eyes when you see even more evidence that these people, at a minimum, and at best, are grossly incompetent. But this is truly another level. You know, imagine this kind of thing happening in literally any business in the country. Imagine the cook at IHOP telling his boss that he's tremendously prepared for the breakfast rush, and then the customers show up and actually turns out there's no flour, there's no eggs, there's no bacon in the kitchen. They need an emergency shipment because they're all out of ingredients. How long do you think that cook would have a job exactly? 5 seconds? Less? As you just heard at the tail end of that Fox News report, this is starting to look like something much worse than incompetence. It looks a bit like embezzlement, actually. First of all, didn't the government's fiscal year just start on October 1st? How are they out of money already? And why exactly was FEMA administering billion-dollar services, quote unquote, to foreign nationals, including illegal aliens living inside this country? As the New York Post reports, quote, the Department of Homeland Security allocated $640 million this year in FEMA-administered funds to aid state and local governments coping with the influx of asylum seekers. And DHS allocated $780 million for the migrant crisis last year through the FEMA Emergency Food and Shelter Program, which funds relief not associated with natural disasters. and the FEMA Shelter and Services Program, which was authorized in late 2022 by Congress to respond to the migrant crisis. Now, that money, according to the DHS website, goes to families and individuals encountered by the Department of Homeland Security. There doesn't need to be an emergency or a natural disaster or anything like that. These people just need to come into this country illegally, and they're eligible. And so they're getting paid while our own citizens are stranded in their homes and drowning. In response to this reporting, the DHS claimed that Congress didn't authorize that $1.4 billion to go to American citizens. It was supposedly earmarked for the migrant crisis, meaning it was never intended for Americans, which is supposed to be reassuring. It's supposed to be a defense when they say, oh, no, yeah, we were never going to spend that money on Americans. Yeah, we believe you. That's the problem, you scumbags. But in any event, that still doesn't explain why the DHS secretary said FEMA was well prepared just 3 months ago. And more importantly, it doesn't explain why we're spending so much money on providing food and shelter to illegal migrants when we don't even have enough money to fund disaster relief for American citizens. When we are in a country now where there could be American citizens in an American town in this country who are stranded in their homes for days on end. I mean, that should not happen at all in this country. It is a disgrace that could happen at all. With all the resources that we have, that there could be people stranded for days on end. How are we not in a position where we can get them out within hours with all the money that's being spent? And that's not even getting into the hundreds of billions of dollars we've spent to, we've sent to Ukraine, which comes out to more than $5,000 per Ukrainian. And keep that in mind, $5,000 per Ukrainian, because by comparison, American citizens are not getting nearly as much. As the Post reports, quote, a relatively paltry $4 million has been paid directly to families and individuals in the week since Hurricane Helene ravaged the Southeast, killing at least 202 people, causing severe flood damage from Florida to North Carolina. For her part, acting President Kamala Harris has announced that affected families in this country are eligible for a grand total of $750 in FEMA assistance. Watch.
And the federal relief and assistance that we have been providing has included FEMA providing $750 for folks who need immediate needs being met, such as food, baby formula, and the like. And you can apply now for anyone who's watching this who has been affected. There are FEMA personnel who are going door to door to interact personally with folks, especially those who do not have electricity. But also that aid, if you have electricity, can be applied for online. And I encourage people to do that. FEMA will just basically verify your address, and then the process should take hold.
Wow, $750. You know, your home is destroyed. You've lost literally everything. You've lost everything that you've ever owned is gone. And you're going to get $750. Meanwhile, civilians who try to help are being prevented from doing so. Here's Congressman Corey Mills explaining that because Joe Biden was in the area, the federal government just prevented civilian rescue pilots and aid workers from saving lives in the aftermath of this disaster. Watch.
The other thing is that yesterday for President Biden's, dog and pony show to come in and see photos, he put a 30-mile TFR, which is basically a restriction in the air zone, which means that he actually stopped from 12 o'clock until 4 p.m. He stopped air traffic and helos from transferring supplies, dropping SAR teams, picking up individuals from medevacs. So that was not only irresponsible, but if you're going to come a week later, at least make sure that you're not trying to, hinder in any way further the actual operations that are being led by civilian organizations and veterans such as myself and others that are trying to do what is right. And so I found the entire response so far to be not just lacking, but irresponsible and inept.
So to recap, FEMA doesn't provide early warning or timely mandatory evacuation orders. They don't provide any significant assistance after the storm. They divert huge amounts of resources to foreign nationals who have no legal justification for being in this country. They shut down the airspace to block civilian rescue flights. They say they're out of money. And just 3 months ago, they told us they were tremendously prepared for hurricane season. Watching all this, you have to ask yourself why you're even paying taxes. I mean, why are we paying FEMA billions of dollars every year only to make disasters even more deadly? Why are we funneling our money to people who clearly hate us and have no interest in helping, doing the job that they're paid to do? Ask yourself, if the Biden-Harris administration wanted to go out of its way to punish American citizens, wanted to actually cause suffering, what exactly would they be doing differently? You know, at some point, complete and total incompetence is indistinguishable from malice. And anyone who's been paying attention to FEMA over the past year, as well as everyone living in the areas that have been decimated by this hurricane, knows that we are now well past that point. Your online activity isn't private. Data brokers track everything you do online, your browsing, shopping habits, even your beliefs. And in the US, they can legally sell all this information. Companies buy this data to target you with ads. Social media platforms use it to control what content you see. During elections, it's used to influence your vote. To protect your privacy and maintain your autonomy online, you should be using ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN reroutes all of my online activity through secure encrypted servers, making it impossible for my internet provider to see what I'm doing online. That means you can browse without feeling like somebody's watching over your shoulder all the time. It also hides your IP address, which is that unique number that identifies you online, allows data brokers to build and sell profiles about you. But without access to your IP or activity data, these companies, well, they have nothing to work with. It's really that simple. I enjoy using ExpressVPN on the road to help keep all of my data private and protected. It provides peace of mind no matter where I'm located. Plus, ExpressVPN is remarkably simple to use. Just one click activates protection across all my devices, and it works up to 8 devices at the same time simultaneously. Find out how you can get 4 months free by scanning the QR code on screen, clicking the link in the description box below, or by going to expressvpn.com/WalshYT. Joe Biden's first and last term in office has been an unmitigated disaster in every sense of the term across the entire board and in every area. Though Biden is likely not aware of his failures because he's not aware of anything. He doesn't even know how he got into whatever room he's standing in currently. Much less does he understand his own policies or their impact on the public. Still, it has been a cavalcade of catastrophes. So what else is a Democrat going to do heading into an election season with no achievements to highlight, no successes to brag about? Well, he has only one desperation move, one Hail Mary play, and that is to, of course, bribe the voters. Or rather, more specifically, bribe some of the voters, a relatively small fraction actually, and to do so at the expense of all the other voters, hoping that the group left holding the bag doesn't notice that they're holding it. And so finally yesterday, after much buildup and anticipation, President Biden did officially announce that he would forgive, quote unquote, $300 billion of student loan debt. The plan, which the White House unveiled on Wednesday, would wipe out $10,000 worth of loans for borrowers earning less than $125,000 in income as individuals or $250,000 as a household. He has taken out his magic wand and poofed all of that debt away. Well, not really. I mean, the wand is more of a giant broom, which will be used to sweep the debt from one part of the room over into another, even larger part. The mess that had been mucking up one corner will now become a more widely distributed mess across a larger portion of the house. And worst of all, the people that are now left to deal with the mess are precisely the ones who did not create it and had nothing at all to do with it. The plan translates into about $2,000 worth of additional financial burden for every taxpayer, but that's only the beginning. The even greater cost will come in the form of inflation. Of course, Biden says that there's no need to worry about inflation because reasons.
By resuming student loan payments at the same time as we provide targeted relief, we're taking an economically responsible course. As a consequence, about $50 billion a year will start coming back into the Treasury because of resumption of debt. Independent experts agree that these actions taken together will provide real benefits for families without meaningful effect on inflation.
Well, that is nonsense, obviously. As Jason Furman, a former economic advisor to Obama, wrote yesterday, he said, pouring roughly $500 billion of gasoline on the inflationary fire that's already burning is reckless. Doing it while going well beyond one campaign promise, $10,000 of student loan relief, and breaking another, all proposals paid for, is even worse. Now, that's especially compelling coming from an economics guy who worked for a Democrat, but we don't need him or anyone else to tell us this. Obviously, dumping $300 billion into an economy already ravaged by inflation will create more inflation. Any rational person can see that. Even as the Democrats, as always, tell us not to believe our lying eyes. And also don't believe our lying ears. Especially when our ears heard Nancy Pelosi just recently declare that the president does not have the authority to do what he just did yesterday. You may recall this.
People think that the President of the United States, is this more on the subject than you ever want to know? Well, you'll let me know. People think that the President of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have that power. That has to be an act of Congress.
Yet another moment to be shoved down the memory hole. But if you really want to understand how indefensible this move from Biden is, all you have to do is listen to the administration try to defend it. For example, here was Biden yesterday when asked whether this policy is fair to the people who've already paid back their loans. And that's a very good question. Here's what he says.
Thank you.
Mr. President, is this unfair to people who paid their student loans or chose not to take out loans?
Is it fair to people who, in fact, do not own multi-billion-dollar businesses to see why these guys get them all at tax breaks? Is that fair? What do you think?
What about people who paid their loans, though, struggle to pay their loans, and now others don't have to?
What? That was a total non sequitur. Too incoherent and irrelevant to even qualify as a straw man. Mr. President, why did you just kick that dog in the face? Why did I kick the dog? Well, what about the orca and Free Willy? Remember him? He was treated poorly. Was that fair? Was it? What? And before you blame his response on dementia, please note how the White House spokesperson was also asked some questions about this and didn't perform much better when confronted with a similar line of questioning. Let's watch that.
Again, here's what we have done.
Here's a lot about how much it might cost, it might not cost. Who is paying for this?
What we are saying is the work that this administration has done, the work that the Democrats in Congress has done is actually there. And you see that the 1.7 trillion deficit deduction that you see is going to benefit us in being able to do something for the middle class, to do something for the middle class. This is about doing something for people who make less than $125,000, $1.7 trillion. That's what we've been able to do.
But when you forgive debt, you're not just disappearing debt. So who is paying for this?
And then I'll give you the second part. We lifted the pause, right? We're going to lift the pause at the end of this year, which is going to matter, right? Which is going to offset a lot of what we're doing as well.
Well, that doesn't answer the question at all, and it's nonsense. First of all, think about what they're claiming here. The White House expects us to believe that they're offsetting the $300 billion loan forgiveness by not forgiving the rest of it. What? If I lend you $20 and then I forgive half of it, can I offset the cost of losing 10 of the dollars I'm owed by still recouping the other 10? Now, I'm not a math whiz, but that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. But of course, my analogy doesn't really work because in that scenario, I am eating the cost of my own forgiveness. Because, by the way, that's what forgiveness actually is. When you forgive someone, that's something that you are choosing to do. Okay, you are, to use a favorite leftist phrase, you are doing the work. But if you're just making someone else carry the burden, then that's not forgiveness. And in this case, though Karen Jean-Pierre doesn't want to say it out loud, the people paying for this forgiveness are the ordinary taxpayers. And as always, the burden will be felt heaviest, most by the working class. So think about this plan for a moment. College graduates earning 6 figures as an individual will have part of their debts paid by people making a fraction of their salary, most of whom didn't even go to college. And I know that because the majority of adults in this country do not have bachelor degrees. The median individual income in the USA is less than $40,000. Biden is offering forgiveness, quote unquote, to college graduates making 3 times the median. Half of the student debt is held by graduate students. graduate students are, in fact, a big part of the reason why we're in this mess. Again, half of the debt is theirs. And these are people who kept taking out loans. They didn't just take out loans when they were 18, but when they were well into adulthood, kept taking out loans, staying in school for years and years. We all know people like this. It's just like they don't want to get a job or live, so they just keep going back to school, racking up degree after worthless degree, staying there for years, spending all this money. And now those who made more responsible decisions and who earn far less money must carry the burden for the poor choices they had nothing to do with that were made by people wealthier than them. It is obscene. We are, in fact, bailing out PhDs by reaching into the pockets of plumbers and mechanics. We're taking money from working families and handing it to gender studies majors. That's what we're doing. Words can hardly express what a ludicrous injustice this actually is.